Welcome to Patricia's Potpourri. And this is a continuation of a Harlem businessman's journey. This is part 2 of the journey of Buster Reed, former owner of the Lenox Lounge. As you know, this episode and all previous episodes of Patricia's Potpourri may be seen at your convenience on YouTube. Well, what I'd like to do is welcome my guest, Buster Reed.
How you doing?
Okay, a real Harlemite. And if you looked at our previous episodes, you would see that he went to the Army. He was a part of the 369th Brigade or Army. And you know it's still there in Harlem, so we still feel so connected to that special part of that Army. But he had a problem. Buster, do you mind telling us what happened to you when you came home from the 369th Army? Where did you go for your training, and what were you going to be?
I started out in Fort Dix, New Jersey, taking up infantry, and from there we were shipped out to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, to study to be a surveyor. And we needed surveyors for the 369th Armory. And so we took a group of about 12 soldiers out there. I studied very hard. We had 4 tests, and I took the 4 tests that we had to take. I did very well. I did 98, 93, 92, and 89.
Exceptional marks.
And the minimum was 65 passing.
So what happened? So you became a surveyor?
I became a surveyor there. I took training as a surveyor. You had to know a lot of math. You had a lot of instruments with a 3-man partner. I used to be on the telescope and getting the different angles. And then we had somebody that stretched out the distance. And what it was getting prepared for is to go overseas to the Korean War and line up to where the enemy's gunners were, and then radio their location back to our side.
Wow. I heard something happened. There was some snafu when you came back about being a surveyor. What happened?
Okay, they didn't give us our marks while we were there. They said when we get back to our unit in New York, the 369th, about 3 months later, our marks would come. So everybody in the group that I was, they knew I did very well. And when we got back to the Armory, most of them didn't do well. And so when we got back to the Armory, they was telling our captain how well I did and stuff like that. And so they were preparing me to become a specialist in the Army. That's one above PFC, and I would be specializing in that. So when my marks came in 3 months later, they called me down to the office at the 369th, and they says, everybody said you did so well, but you failed. I said, failed? They said, yeah, here's your marks. And I looked at, they gave me, passing was 65. They gave me a 64.9 or .11, 1 decimal point off of passing.
Wow.
And we knew that they were very, very prejudiced with us down in that Fort Sill, Oklahoma. But we never knew that they would do that. Somebody in the Army, somebody who did very well, someone who's going to fight for the country, and just failed me.
Wow. You know what? In spite of this injustice, I know that you went on and did other great things. Tell me, what was your next step after that devastating blow?
Well, first thing I did was I had to find a job. I hadn't graduated from high school because I dropped out of high school to go into the service. And I was only 17. So I was really underage. You're supposed to be 18 to go into service. So without having any type of education or diploma, so I had to take a lot of jobs like pushing hand trucks, washing floors, carrying packages in the garment center. They had plenty of jobs back then. I'm talking about in 1957. And so they had a lot of jobs, and most people down there that didn't graduate from high school, they always could get a job. So I worked down there. And finally, I went back to high school. My class was still in session, and they told me that I couldn't go to day school because I had too much experience, and that the young ladies, I would take advantage of them. They made it seem like being that I went through the experience of being in the Army and I'm coming back, even though I was the same age, because my class was still in session, because I only was gone 3 months. And so they said, you can't come back to day school, you have to go to night school. So I went to night school, and it took me about 2-3 years working and stuff, so I finally got my diploma. So now my diploma, my class was a class of 57. My diploma was 1961, because I was behind my class. So sometime when I go to my reunions, I say, oh, I graduated 61. I'm much younger than you guys. but anyway, and then I got another job. I went to the unemployment, and they gave me a job. And then they laid me off for 3 months. And I'm not one for not working or going on unemployment. So a friend of mine told me they had another job over on his job. So I went over there. So I was making $40 a week, $1 an hour. So I went to this other job. And so they interviewed me. And so they called up my last job. And the boss said, oh, that's Alvin Reed over there? Oh, no, we just laid him off for 3 months. We want him back. And put him on the phone. So I got on the phone. He said, no, we want to call you back and stuff. So the new employee was so impressed that he hired me, and he gave me $42.50 a week. So that was, back then, that wasn't bad. We could dress and stuff like that. And they taught me how to fix sewing machines, and I ran errands or pushed hand trucks. I did a whole lot. Then finally, I was in night school, and finally I graduated. So I was able to take all the city's tests. You had to at least have a high school diploma. So I took the sanitation, I took the police, I took the transit police, I took the fire department. So I got called.
What did you get called to?
The police department.
Ah.
Yeah. So I was excited about that, and because at one time, when I was 14 years old, I got beat up in the precinct. The cops beat me up.
I heard it was a 32nd precinct, right?
32nd precinct, yeah. I made a complaint, and so I wanted to be a real good cop, so that made me want to help people and stuff like that. And so then I was on probation. So then the correction officer called me. So I said, I'm on probation. I don't know if I'm going to make it through, the academy.
Now, let
Police
me
academy.
explain to our audience what probation means. It's a term that they just put you on hold for that job.
You're not in jail
You're not,
probation.
yeah, that's not the probation for jail. That's the probation for your job, you know,
Right.
that you have a waiting period. That's what it is.
I'm glad you classified that. But anyway, so me like to be ahead of everything. So when the correction officer called me, I went. And so when they interviewed me, and they found out that I was working as a police officer. So they said, well, why are you coming here? I said, well, I'm on probation still, 6 months probation. If I don't,
Make it as a police officer.
yeah, so
I
I
can be a
can,
corrections.
yeah. So they said, well, that don't make sense to us, you know? And so they, they sent me to a psychiatrist. They had to explain to the psychiatrist. I didn't see nothing wrong with that. I'm just a person.
Because it was a backup.
Yes.
Yeah.
I always have backups in my life, you know, and I suggest everybody else should have a backup
I
just in
feel that
case.
way too.
Yeah. So they thought, you know, so, you know, and then the police department, you know, they gave me a hard way to go also because they came up with, I had gotten a summons 2 or 3 times on the subway from sneaking on the subway as a kid. So
And they went back that far.
they went back that far. Then they also challenged, my son was born on March the 1st, 1965. I got married November the 7th, 1964. So they said, well, how come your son is, that's not possible. I said, listen,
They're getting you.
I said, listen, it's obvious that she was pregnant before we got married. And
They got into your personal
yeah,
business like
so
that.
they said, well, you have to explain that. So I guess they figured I wouldn't go through all of this. They was giving me a hard way to go.
Because they thought that they could make you give up.
Right. And so I needed the job, you know. So they told me I had to write a letter and explain what happened. So I felt, you know, kind of odd, but I did it. I said I was so much in love with my wife, and I made a mistake. And she got pregnant, and so I gave it to them. I suspect that they tore it up and put it in the garbage. That they just want to see if I can.
Put you through that, yeah.
Yeah, like that. But I became a very good police officer.
So you like that. You enjoy being a policeman. I know some policemen
Yeah.
that you were with, because you and I both know Lieutenant Bodie.
Yes, Lieutenant Bodie, yeah.
Yeah, that lived on Elton Avenue in Brooklyn.
Right.
Yeah, he was a friend of my dad's. Yeah, yeah. So after the police, you stayed. How long did you stay with the police department?
Okay. I left one thing out. I went to the post office first.
Oh,
After I graduated and I got my diploma, I could take the post office test, so I went there in 1961. And I worked there for 3 years and 9 months. Then I started taking the police test. Yeah, so they called me, and I went to the police department. And I stayed there until I retired. Then I went back to the post office.
so you went from the police department.
From the post office to the police department,
Wow,
and then back to the post office.
wow,
So I was able to retire from 2 jobs.
That's fabulous. That's fabulous. So what after you retired, period, what did you decide to do?
I've always somehow was in business, shoestring businesses, in between.
Didn't you say you had some little businesses during your growing up period? You always got involved with business.
Yes, every time I had a knack to see what people wanted, you know, and my first thing was selling the newspapers, and I brokered a deal, my first business deal, with doing the Amsterdam News. They had Mr. Stanley on 135th and 7th Avenue. He had a candy store, but every Sunday he'd get a lot of newspaper, Amsterdam News. So we used to sell those, for 15 cents, and Mr. Stanley gave us 3 cents for every one we sold. So I said, Mr. Stanley, I'm selling a lot of newspapers. I said, can I get a little raise? He said, well, the only way I can work something out with you, you buy the newspapers. I'll sell it to you for 10 cents, and you keep 5 cents when you sell it. So I got 2-3 cents more. So he said, but don't tell nobody else this, So then I started selling the Jet came out, the magazine Jet. I started selling that. Then after that, I'm back in the post office, and then I saw another need in the post office. The ladies, we worked from 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. And the ladies used to sit around and wasn't going home. So I said, why y'all not going home? They said it was too dangerous in the subway. So I said, bingo, I bought a van.
Entrepreneurial.
Yeah, so I started driving them home. Then I had an overflow, so then I got a station wagon, and I got a driver to help me. And so I was taking people home. Then I saw an ad in the newspaper for the Flushing YMCA, man with van. So I went on that interview because I was home at the daytime. So I got a contract with them to pick up the kids in the morning, bring them to the YMCA to school, then at lunchtime take them back, and then bring some more. And so I had that pretty going good. And then the post office at night.
Wow.
So, and then I also did, in the 80s, I promoted shows, doo-wop shows.
Oh, tell us about that.
Yeah, I was doing them in Manhattan. I went down to Florida, and I did Jerry Butler, and I did Bobby Blue Bland. I did the Dell Vikings. I did Johnny and Joe, all of those old doo-wop groups. I lost money. It was something I was trying out. That was really, most of the things I did was my college education, just doing it, going out and doing it. I didn't have the college, but I had my good common sense, and I saved my money, so I was trying a lot of different things. I wanted to be a businessman, and so a couple of incidents down there in Hollywood, Florida, we booked this club called Code 2, and I got ripped off with the security on the side doors were letting people come in and get them, and at the hotel I didn't. When I booked them in the hotel, I had to pay for their hotels, and being a little naive, a little bit. I didn't tell the hotel that they don't get no food and no drinks.
So they were putting everything on the tab so you could pay.
They was drinking champagne, eating the best of food and stuff. And when I went, after the show was over and everybody left town, I went over to the hotel to pay my bill. And they said, boy, you got a big bill here. What do you mean? They said, oh, they had champagne, they was eating and all the other stuff. So I paid it, but that was my education.
Yes.
So I learned from every stage. And Bobby Blue Bland, who was the opening, not the opening act, he was a big act, he gave me a contract saying he wanted 20 sandwiches, assorted sandwiches, corned beef, and stuff like that, ham and stuff. And he wanted a case of Bud Light. So I had the contract, so I hired a limo, and he went. Supposedly he got the sandwiches and the beer. So after the first opening act was the ladies that did a song called Push Push in the Bush. So they opened So then now it's time for Bobby Bland. So he didn't come up. So they say he's down in his dressing room and he's mad, and he said, bring your butt down here. So I said, well, I don't know what's going on. I went down there. He said, I'm not going on the stage because you didn't fulfill the contract. I said, yes, I did. I said, we gave you the sandwiches and the beer. He said, but you gave me Budweiser. I said, Budweiser? So I said, no. So I called the guy, and he says, oh, yeah, I gave him Budweiser because in this town they didn't have Bud Light. He said the next town might have it. So Bobby Bland said, well, you better send him out to the next town. 'Cause I'm not So we had to hold the show up. He got in the limo, went back to this. It was like a 20-minute ride both ways. So he came back. He had the Bud Light. I take it down to his dressing room. He's out of it. I don't know what he did. I don't know if he did some drugs or something like that. I don't know. But
So what happened?
so I had to drag him out of there. So I dragged him up to the stage, shook him a little bit, and put him on the seat, and he sang his behind off. But prior to that, people were screaming if they want their money back. He's not here. This is like that. But
From that experience, what did you evolve? What was the next experience after you managing doing those particular shows?
well, I came back to New York. My head hanging a little bit, and
Of course, you lost money.
I lost money, and it wasn't the money so much, but I failed. I felt like I failed. And so I started reading a little more, and then I started reading about real estate. So I was in the post office, and I'm reading all about real estate and stuff like that. So I got into a little real estate. I had bought a house out in Queens with me and my wife. She was still alive then. And then I wanted to come back to Harlem. I wanted to do some kind of business in Harlem. I didn't know what kind, but I wanted to go. By that time, I had learned things, how you can fail and still survive. So I looked in the Amsterdam News. I had a good friend of mine. I said, listen, his name was Hank West. I said, me and you gonna go into business. I don't know what business, but let's keep our eyes open. But what we have to do first thing is save money. I said, because when things happen, if you don't have the money, it'll pass you right by. So he says, okay. So I started saving money, me and my wife. So finally, I looked in the Amsterdam News. It said historical nightclub for sale. I said, oh, man. So I went, called the guy up, and he said, Lenox Lounge. At that time, that area was kind of bad, so I was a little lucky.
Now, wait, where was that area?
On Lenox Avenue, 288 Lenox Avenue, between 125th and 124th.
Uh-huh.
And I heard years ago that it was really a real nice nightclub where a lot of celebrities used to go in there. I went in there when
So you weren't the original owner of Lenox
No,
Avenue?
I wasn't really.
Ah, Lenox Lounge. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Italians had it first.
Uh-huh.
And they passed it from nephew to brother, and they finally got down to the last nephew, and he took it over. But then he started having, eye problems, and he was in his late 70s, so they put it up for sale. And
Wow.
so they wanted $85,000. So I had
Back then.
back then, not for the building, because they owned the whole building, but for the business. They sold the building to someone else 3 months before I bought the business. So now I'm calling up my friend, how much money have you saved? He said, I didn't save anything. I said, you didn't save anything? He said, no. Well, my friend was like this. He can't prepare. He wanna when it's there. Now he's ready, but you can't do it like that. You got to save some money. So I couldn't get him as a partner. So I went to people in the post office, people in the police department. I was trying to get. I had saved $15,000 by then, so I needed two more guys with $15,000 because I was gonna ask the owner, can I pay him a part and then pay him over the next 2 years? So half of it was like $40,000, something like that. So I figured three guys with 15 grand. So I couldn't find nobody. Nobody wanted to go into business. Is it a sure thing, they said. I said, nothing is sure in business. But
Okay.
if we
Now,
work hard, yeah.
well, I want you to stop for a minute because this is the beginning of you getting things together so you can own Lennox Lounge.
Right.
Wow. So, who did you find? Did you find someone?
No. Fortunate, well, my wife was a little leery too. A lot of people are leery about going into business, and we need more businessmen, especially from out, you know. And so I had a house by then. So I took out an equity line. So I was able to give them the $45,000, and then I paid a balance over 2 years while I'm operating.
Wow. You know, I heard other stories how people gave up their personal possessions to go into business. Uh, I think the woman from Howard University that started TV One, how she sacrificed. So I see how you sacrifice. So you can. The bigger goal was to own this Lennox Lounge. Wow, wow. Well, I want everyone to come back for part 3 because I would love for you to tell us what happened when you first got the money together for Lennox Lounge and the opening of Lennox Lounge. This is Buster Reed, and I want to thank you so much, Buster Reed, for coming to Patricia's Potpourri and telling us about your prior experiences, about the experiences of a Harlem businessman, because you did a lot of things.
Yes, I am.
You did a lot of things.
And not finished.
Okay, could you look in the camera? No, we'll talk about that next
Yeah.
time. So this is part 2, and there's going to be a part 3. Okay, Adventures of a Harlem Businessman, Buster Reed. I want to thank you so much for coming to Patricia's Potpourri, and I know that if you did not see part 1, you may get it on YouTube,